Hi there! This is day number 321. And what a great selection of scriptures I have for you today. Ezra 3 and 4, Isaiah 30, and 2 Corinthians 11. If you're paying attention, you will find treasures today. So let's start in Ezra 3. Ezra, a scribe and priest, doesn't start talking about himself until chapter 7. Ancient copies of the books of Ezra and Nehemiah were written on the same scroll, and Jewish tradition holds that Ezra wrote both of them. The dates of writing are somewhere between 458 and 420 BC. I kind of doubt that Ezra was the author of both books, because the writer of Nehemiah starts out right away using the first-person pronoun I. The two books deal with two periods of time. Ezra deals with the rebuilding of the temple, and Nehemiah deals with the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem. Yesterday in Ezra, we heard about Cyrus's decree to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, the return of the temple treasures that were taken to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar, and the first large wave of returning exiles and their gifts to God. Ezra chapter 3. By the 7th month, the people of Israel were all settled in their towns. Then they all assembled in Jerusalem, and Joshua, son of Jehozadak, his fellow priests, and Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, together with his relatives, rebuilt the altar of the God of Israel, so that they could burn sacrifices on it, according to the instructions written in the law of Moses, the man of God. Even though the returning exiles were afraid of the people who were living in the land, they rebuilt the altar where it had stood before. Then they began once again to burn on it the regular morning and evening sacrifices. They celebrated the festival of shelters according to the regulations. Each day they offered the sacrifices required for that day, and in addition they offered the regular sacrifices to be burned whole and those to be offered at the new moon festival and at all the other regular assemblies at which the Lord is worshipped, as well as the offerings that were given to the Lord voluntarily. Although the people had not yet started to rebuild the temple, they began on the first day of the 7th month to burn sacrifices to the Lord. The people gave money to pay the stonemasons and the carpenters, and gave food, drink, and olive oil to be sent to the cities of Tyre and Sidon in exchange for cedar trees from Lebanon, which were to be brought by sea to Joppa. All this was done with the permission of Emperor Cyrus of Persia. So in the 2nd month of the year after they came back to the site of the temple in Jerusalem, they began work. Zerubbabel, Joshua, and the rest of the people, the priests and the Levites, in fact, all the exiles who had come back to Jerusalem, joined in the work. All the Levites 20 years of age or older were put in charge of the work of rebuilding the temple. The Levite Jeshua and his sons and relatives, and Kadmiel and his sons, the clan of Hodaviah, joined together in taking charge of the rebuilding of the temple. They were helped by the Levites of the clan of Henadad. When the builders started to lay the foundation of the temple, the priests in their robes took their places with trumpets in their hands, and the Levites of the clan of Asaph stood there with cymbals. They praised the Lord according to the instructions handed down from the time of King David. They sang the Lord's praises, repeating the refrain, "The Lord is good, and his love for Israel is eternal." Everyone shouted with all their might, praising the Lord, because the work on the foundation of the temple had been started. Many of the older priests, Levites, and heads of clans had seen the first temple, and as they watched the foundation of the temple being laid, they cried and wailed. But the others who were there shouted for joy. No one could distinguish between the joyful shouts and the crying, because the noise they made was so loud that it could be heard for miles. Ezra 4. The enemies of the people of Judah and Benjamin heard that those who had returned from exile were rebuilding the temple of the Lord, the God of Israel. So they went to see Zerubbabel and the heads of the clans and said, "Let us join you in building the temple. We worship the same God you worship, and we have been offering sacrifices to him ever since Emperor Esarhaddon of Assyria sent us here to live." Zerubbabel, Joshua, and the heads of the clans told them, "We don't need your help to build a temple for the Lord our God. We will build it ourselves, just as Emperor Cyrus of Persia commanded us." Then the people who had been living in the land tried to discourage and frighten the Jews and keep them from building. They also bribed Persian government officials to work against them. They kept on doing this throughout the reign of Emperor Cyrus and into the reign of Emperor Darius. At the beginning of the reign of Emperor Xerxes, the enemies of the people living in Judah and Jerusalem brought written charges against them. Again, in the reign of Emperor Artaxerxes of Persia, Bishlam, Mithredath, Tabeel, and their associates wrote a letter to the emperor. The letter was written in Aramaic and was to be translated when read. Also Rehum the governor and Shimshai the secretary of the province wrote the following letter to Emperor Artaxerxes about Jerusalem. From Rehum the governor, from Shimshai secretary of the province, from their associates the judges, and from all the other officials who are originally from Erech, Babylon, and Susa in the land of Elam, together with the other peoples whom the great and powerful Ashurbanipal moved from their homes and settled in the city of Samaria and elsewhere in west of Euphrates province. This is the text of the letter. To Emperor Artaxerxes from his servants who live in west of Euphrates. We want your majesty to know that the Jews who came here from your other territories have settled in Jerusalem and are rebuilding that evil and rebellious city. They have begun to rebuild the walls and will soon finish them. Your majesty, if this city is rebuilt and its walls are completed, the people will stop paying taxes and your royal revenues will decrease. Now, because we are under obligation to your majesty, we do not want to see this happen, and so we suggest that you order a search to be made in the records your ancestors kept. If you do, you will discover that this city has always been rebellious, and that from ancient times it has given trouble to kings and to rulers of provinces. Its people have always been hard to govern. This is why the city was destroyed. We therefore are convinced that if this city is rebuilt and its walls are completed, your majesty will no longer be able to control west of Euphrates province. The emperor sent this answer. To Rehum the governor, to Shimshai, secretary of the province, and to their associates who live in Samaria and in the rest of west of Euphrates, greetings. The letter which you sent has been translated and read to me. I gave orders for an investigation to be made, and it has indeed been found out that from ancient times Jerusalem has revolted against royal authority, and that it has been full of rebels and troublemakers. Powerful kings have reigned there and have ruled over the entire province of west of Euphrates, collecting taxes and revenue. Therefore you are to issue orders that those men are to stop rebuilding the city until I give further commands. Do this at once, so that no more harm may come to my interests." As soon as this letter from Emperor Artaxerxes was read to Rehum, Shimshai, and their associates, they hurried to Jerusalem and forced the Jews to stop rebuilding the city. Work on the temple had been stopped and remained at a standstill until the 2nd year of the reign of Emperor Darius of Persia. Let's open now to Isaiah 30. Yesterday's reading in Isaiah 29 included several verses quoted in the New Testament about Israel's hypocrisy. Then, at the end, did you catch who Isaiah was talking about? Verse 18, "In that day the deaf will hear words read from a book, and the blind will see through the gloom and darkness." Verse 20, "The scoffer will be gone, the arrogant will disappear." Isaiah was not talking about the healing of just any ordinary deaf and blind people, but those people previously mentioned, the Israelites who refused to open their ears or open their eyes, who refused to read a book given to them, and yet were arrogant scoffers. If you're not reading a good meaning-based translation, then it is very likely that you will misunderstand today's reading in Isaiah 30, verse 7. The Rahab mentioned is not the woman that received Joshua's spies. Isaiah 30. Heading: A useless treaty with Egypt. The Lord has spoken. Those who rule Judah are doomed because they rebel against me. They follow plans that I did not make and sign treaties against my will, piling one sin on another. They go to Egypt for help without asking for my advice. They want Egypt to protect them, so they put their trust in Egypt's king. But the king will be powerless to help them, and Egypt's protection will end in disaster. Although their ambassadors have already arrived at the Egyptian cities of Zoan and Hanes, the people of Judah will regret that they ever trusted that unreliable nation, a nation that fails them when they expect help. This is God's message about the animals of the southern desert. The ambassadors travel through dangerous country, where lions live and where there are poisonous snakes and flying dragons. They load their donkeys and camels with expensive gifts for a nation that cannot give them any help. The help that Egypt gives is useless, so I have nicknamed Egypt the harmless dragon. Heading: The disobedient people. God told me to write down in a book what the people are like, so that there would be a permanent record of how evil they are. They are always rebelling against God, always lying, always refusing to listen to the Lord's teachings. They tell the prophets to keep quiet. They say, "Don't talk to us about what's right. Tell us what we want to hear. Let us keep our illusions. Get out of our way and stop blocking our path. We don't want to hear about your holy God of Israel." But this is what the holy God of Israel says: "You ignore what I tell you and rely on violence and deceit. You are guilty. You are a high wall with a crack running down it. Suddenly you will collapse. You will be shattered like a clay pot, so badly broken that there is no piece big enough to pick up hot coals with or to dip water from a cistern." The sovereign Lord, the Holy One of Israel, says to the people, Come back and quietly trust in me. Then you will be strong and secure. But you refuse to do it. Instead, you plan to escape from your enemies by riding fast horses. And you are right. Escape is what you will have to do. You think your horses are fast enough, but those who pursue you will be faster. 1,000 of you will run away when you see one enemy soldier, and 5 soldiers will be enough to make you all run away. Nothing will be left of your army except a lonely flagpole on the top of a hill. Yet the Lord is waiting to be merciful to you. He is ready to take pity on you because he always does what is right. Happy are those who put their trust in the Lord. Heading: God will bless his people. You people who live in Jerusalem will not weep anymore. The Lord is compassionate, and when you cry to him for help, he will answer you. The Lord will make you go through hard times, but he himself will be there to teach you, and you will not have to search for him anymore. If you wander off the road to the right or the left, you will hear his voice behind you saying, "Here is the road, follow it." You will take your idols plated with silver and your idols covered with gold, and will throw them away like filth, shouting, "Out of my sight!" Whenever you plant your crops, the Lord will send rain to make them grow, and will give you a rich harvest, and your livestock will have plenty of pasture. The oxen and donkeys that plow your fields will eat the finest and best fodder. On the day when the forts of your enemies are captured and their people are killed, streams of water will flow from every mountain and every hill. The moon will be as bright as the sun, and the sun will be 7 times brighter than usual, like the light of 7 days in one. This will all happen when the Lord bandages and heals the wounds he has given his people. Heading: God will punish Assyria. The Lord's power and glory can be seen in the distance. Fire and smoke show his anger. He speaks, and his words burn like fire. He sends the wind in front of him like a flood that carries everything away. It sweeps nations to destruction and puts an end to their evil plans. But you, God's people, will be happy and sing as you do on the night of a sacred festival. You will be as happy as those who walk to the music of flutes on their way to the temple of the Lord, the defender of Israel. The Lord will let everyone hear his majestic voice and feel the force of his anger. There will be flames, cloud bursts, hailstones, and torrents of rain. The Assyrians will be terrified when they hear the Lord's voice and feel the force of his punishment. As the Lord strikes them again and again, his people will keep time with the music of drums and harps. God himself will fight against the Assyrians. Long ago a place was prepared, and a huge fire will burn the emperor of Assyria. It is deep and wide and piled high with wood. The Lord will breathe out a stream of flame to set it on fire. Opening now to 2 Corinthians 11. Up to yesterday's reading, Paul has been more reserved in criticizing the men who have come masquerading as apostles. These men have been more forceful speakers than Paul, and it has seemed that Paul is only bold in his letters. He said, verse 12, "Oh, don't worry, we wouldn't dare say that we are as wonderful as these other men, who tell you how important they are. But we will see that Paul takes his gloves off as we go forward. Yet, what he boasts about follows that verse he quoted from Jeremiah. As the scriptures say, if you want to boast, boast only about the Lord. 2 Corinthians 11. I wish you would tolerate me even when I'm a bit foolish. Please do. I'm jealous for you, just as God is. You are like a pure virgin whom I have promised in marriage to one man only, Christ himself. I'm afraid that your minds will be corrupted and that you will abandon your full and pure devotion to Christ in the same way that Eve was deceived by the snake's clever lies. For you gladly tolerate anyone who comes to you and preaches a different Jesus, not the one we preached, and you accept a spirit and a gospel completely different from the spirit and the gospel you received from us. I don't think that I am the least bit inferior to those very special so-called apostles of yours. Perhaps I'm an amateur in speaking, but certainly not in knowledge. We have made this clear to you at all times and in all conditions. I did not charge you a thing when I preached the good news of God to you. I humbled myself in order to make you important. Was that wrong of me? While I was working among you, I was paid by other churches. I was robbing them, so to speak, in order to help you. And during the time I was with you, I did not bother you for help when I needed money. The believers who came from Macedonia brought me everything I needed. As in the past, so in the future, I will never be a burden to you. By Christ's truth in me, I promise that this boast of mine will not be silenced anywhere in all of Achaia. Do I say this because I don't love you? God knows I love you. I will go on doing what I'm doing now in order to keep those other apostles from having any reason for boasting and saying that they work in the same way that we do. Those men are not true apostles. They are false apostles who lie about their work and disguise themselves to look like real apostles of Christ. Well, no wonder. Even Satan can disguise himself to look like an angel of light. So it's no great thing if his servants disguise themselves to look like servants of righteousness. In the end, they will get exactly what their actions deserve. I repeat, no one should think that I'm a fool. But if you do, at least accept me as a fool, just so I will have a little to boast of. Of course, what I'm saying now is not what the Lord would have me say. In this matter of boasting, I'm really talking like a fool. But since there are so many who boast for merely human reasons, I will do the same. You yourselves are so wise, and you so gladly tolerate fools. You tolerate anyone who orders you around, or takes advantage of you, or traps you, or looks down on you, or slaps you in the face. I'm ashamed to admit that we were too timid to do those things. But if anyone dares to boast about something, I'm talking like a fool, I will be just as daring. Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they Abraham's descendants? So am I. Are they Christ's servants? I sound like a madman, but I am a better servant than they are. I have worked much harder. I have been in prison more times. I have been whipped much more, and I have been near death more often. 5 times I was given the 39 lashes by the Jews. 3 times I was whipped by the Romans, and once I was stoned. I have been in 3 shipwrecks, and once I spent 24 hours in the water. In my many travels I have been in danger from floods and from robbers, in danger from my own people and from Gentiles. There have been dangers in the cities, dangers in the wilds, dangers on the high seas, and dangers from false friends. There has been work and toil. Often I have gone without sleep. I have been hungry and thirsty. I have often been without enough food, shelter, or clothing. And not to mention other things, every day I'm under the pressure of my concern for all the churches. When someone is weak, then I feel weak too. When someone is led into sin, I am filled with distress. If I must boast, I will boast about things that show how weak I am. The God and Father of our Lord Jesus, blessed be his name forever, knows that I am not lying. When I was in Damascus, the governor under King Aretas placed guards at the city gates to arrest me. But I was let down in a basket through an opening in the wall and escaped from him. Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for Paul's example. He didn't want to boast, but we thank you that he felt forced to do it because we learn so much from what he said. Thank you for his example in every way, and most importantly, his persistent love for the Corinthian church. We thank you for his statement in chapter 1. We felt that the death sentence had been passed on us, but this happened that we should rely not on ourselves, but only on God who raises the dead. So we praise you, Lord, for the promises in Isaiah. You said to Israel, "Come back and quietly trust in me." And we thank you for the words, "The Lord will make you go through hard times, but he himself will be there to teach you, and you will not have to search for him anymore." When we wander off the road, Lord, may we hear your voice behind us saying, "Here is the road, follow it."